18th of February, 10 a.m. The Old Bailey Courtroom. Oh, hey, it's a jury. So this is the highest court in Great Britain. The Old Bailey. The centuries of history in this place is palpable, isn't it? It's so different to the Supreme Court in Japan. It feels both imposing and serene at the same time. The atmosphere almost makes words redundant. Whatever the country, determining a person's guilt or innocence is always a solemn affair. May I say something, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh, yes, what? Your eyes look ready to pop out of your head again. I know, but I just can't help it. That's a much different face than what I was expecting.
In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. We are here today to determine the guilt or innocence of Mr. Magnus McGilded. I now call upon the counsels for the prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed.
The prosecution is fully prepared. That must be the Reaper of the Bailey. He really does look fully prepared to dispatch his next poor victim to the underworld.
Counsel for the defense, you appear to be Eastern. Do you speak English?
Huh? Oh, yes, of course. Sorry. But he asked if the defense was ready. And I couldn't be further from ready if I tried. Those eyes please me. Nipponese. Nipponese. It's supposed to be Nipponese, because Nippon is how you say Japan in Japanese. They shroud your fear, your doubt, your trepidation. They run wild, clinging to some phantom notion of courage. The quintessential look of a sacrificial lamb. Ah, a cold shiver just ran down my spine, all the way to the tips of my toes.
No.
Oop, that was a little loud.
No, Mr. McGilded.
Yes, my lord.
You stand accused of murder, a capital offense. You could be sent to the gallows if found guilty. Are you quite sure you wish to entrust your defense to this foreigner?
As I've always said, my lord, 'tis a grand thing to give opportunities to the young. Even if the fella is a student from some little island off in the Far East. Is it not the British way to ignore the dangers to yourself and give those less fortunate a fair chance? I like to think that acts of chivalry do the great British Empire proud. Listen to Mr. McGilded. What a fine gentleman London has. And did you hear that he donated £5,000 to the government the other day? Mother, please may we go and play McGilded Park? It seems as though everyone in the public gallery is firmly behind Mr. McGilded. That's definitely welcome news, and he certainly has a way with words. I'm surprised he couldn't convince anyone to defend him.
Eloquently put, Mr. McGilded, in most laudable sentiments. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm sure I need hardly remind you that you 6 members of the public have been selected for your impartiality. Are you ready to proceed?
Yes, my lord. If the task is to send rotters to the gallows where they belong, I'm more than ready.
Oh my god, that really peaked the mic. I am so sorry for that. Let me try turning this down just a little bit more. Hopefully that'll help a little bit. At the manor, his lordship always says we should dispose of rubbish promptly. Naturally, I agree. Ha! Any criminals here will soon be wishing they never set eyes on me.
I feel a chill.
Oh, don't mind me, my dears.
I'll just be getting on with my meeting. Let's finish these myths for my grandson. Mr. Naruhodo, those people are the jury. Yes, that's something we don't have in Japan yet. That's right. I've only ever read about it. But here in Great Britain, the court's final verdict depends on the opinions of these 6 jurors. The judge passes sentence according to the law, but the jurors determine guilt based on common sense. So the defendant is ultimately judged from 2 completely different points of view. But how exactly do the jurors give their verdict? That I don't know, but I'm sure it will become clear as the trial progresses. Yes. I was expecting this part to be first investigation, so I hope that my voice does not crap the bed tonight. I'm probably going to be a little hoarse tomorrow.
Prosecutor Von Zeeks.
My lord.
It's been a number of years since we've seen you here in the courtroom. I thought you'd renounced your fame.
I'm known as the Reaper of the Bailey, my lord. Infamy rather than fame, I would say. But yes, 5 years have passed since I last spread my wings in this capacity.
So, what brings you back? Is there some change of circumstance of which the court should be aware?
I leave that to your imagination, my lord. So the Reaper has been out of action for 5 years. Why did he have to choose today of all days to make a comeback? Don't lose heart, Mr. Naruhodo.
As you wish, sir. The court nevertheless welcomes your return. Now then, opening statements, I think. A summary of the case, if you please.
Certainly, my lord. As your lordship is aware, this is a case of overwhelming simplicity. We must be the only ones in here who aren't aware. The incident took place in the late evening, 3 days past. The hour was some minutes after 10. The victim was a maker of building bricks known in the community as Thrice-Fired Mason. This voice is really quiet. Sorry, thrice?
He was a very accomplished craftsman. The bricks he fired were said to be almost indestructible.
The victim's corpse was discovered in an omnibus in service on the streets of London at the time. A dagger that had been thrust into the victim's abdomen is believed to be the ultimate cause of death. Here is the autopsy report from the investigating medical officer at Scotland Yard.
Thank you, counsel. I shall accept that in the photograph as evidence.
Autopsy report has been entered into the court record. A report prepared by the Scotland Yard coroner gives the cause of death as internal hemorrhaging as a result of a single stab wound to the abdomen. A photograph of the crime scene has been entered into the court record. A photograph of the victim taken on the omnibus. The knife in his abdomen is clearly visible, but his face is partially obscured from view by an old crooked hat. And one further item of evidence. The prosecution wishes to submit these as well.
And these are... Good Lord! Is that blood, counsel?
Yes, my lord. Seized by a policeman who arrived at the scene. These gore-soaked gloves were taken from the hands of the accused when he was arrested. What? Mr. McGilden's gloves had blood on them?
Yes, I will accept these evidence as well.
The defendant's leather gloves have been entered into the court record. The leather gloves the defendant was wearing at the time of the incident. There is a blood stain on the right glove. How did I get into this? I backed into a corner before I've even started. Continuing. According to the driver of the omnibus, there were only 2 passengers traveling inside his vehicle at the time. Only 2? Obviously, one of those passengers was the deceased brickmaker, Mr. Mason. The other was the accused, Magnus McGilded.
Well, rather damning circumstances, to say the least. Defendant, what say you?
Well, of course, I have no recollection of such a thing. Mr. McGilded. To be sure, I rode the omnibus that evening. But whenever I'm in a carriage, I'm taken with a fierce tiredness, and I always succumb to it.
Are you claiming to have been asleep?
'Tis the motion of the carriage, my lord. Lilting, so it is. And when I opened my eyes again, 'twas a desperate sight before me. The body of a man I'd never laid eyes upon before in my life. Now I ask yous, what good-hearted soul wouldn't rush to help a fellow bleeding from his stomach? I wasn't about to start worrying about me gloves now, was I? I reached out to give the man a hand. So the blood got onto the gloves then, after the man had been killed. Unfortunately, that statement of the driver's is only the beginning. What? That's not all of it? There were multiple witnesses to the precise moment at which the brickmaker was fatally stabbed.
Order! Order! Order!
When the killing took place, only the victim and the accused were inside the carriage, and there were witnesses to the crime. This is not just a case of compelling evidence. It's the nail in the coffin for the accused.
Thank you, counsel. The circumstances of the crime have been made quite clear. I think we will hear testimony from these witnesses first of all.
Your wish is my command. Bailiff, bring the witnesses in at once. A lot of different people. This game is gonna be a death sentence to my vocal cords. I'm really gonna have to pace this out. Which sucks because I really want to get through this game, but I don't know. Witnesses, your names and occupations. My name is, well, everyone calls me Beppo. I drive an omnibus in the East End.
Bruce Fairplay. I'm a baker in the city.
My name's First, Lady First. I, make hats for gents. Let's begin by confirming the facts. 3 days ago, at a short time after 10 o'clock in the evening, all of you present in the stand were in an omnibus and witnesses to the aforementioned incident. Is that correct? Yes, sir.
Quite right.
Yes, sir, that's right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm gonna be forgetting these voices.
Very well then, let's proceed to your formal testimonies, please. Each of you will tell the court precisely what you saw.
What the witnesses saw. It was the last bus of the evening, so I had very few customers. I remember it well.
The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus. Then out of the blue,
The accused just reached over and plunged a knife right into the guts.
That's right, he stabbed him. I screamed, I did, couldn't help it. As soon as I heard the scream, I stopped my bus. And then I saw it too.
Unambiguous testimony, I must say.
Exactly, my lord. These men witnessed the incident in the omnibus with their own eyes. I'd like to ask a question, if I may.
Yes, counsel?
Well, this testimony, Makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
Why not?
Well, the incident took place inside a moving carriage, didn't it?
As has been clearly stated from the outset, yes.
Well, in that case, how could those two witnesses possibly have seen what happened? There's no way they could have seen the inside of the moving carriage.
How quaint. I'd read that civilization in the Eastern Island nations was a good century behind our own. But you're here in London yourself. Are you really so ignorant about our omnibuses?
Huh?
Tell me, my Nipponese friend, have you even traveled in an omnibus?
Well, no. We, only arrived in London this morning.
No matter. I've arranged for all of us to see for ourselves. The actual scene of the crime, that is.
What do you mean? The actual scene? How?
A carriage is designed to be moved, after all. Presumably you understand that much.
Yes.
The omnibus in which this bloody crime took place is here today in this very building.
Here? What? The entire carriage?
Bailiff, bring forth the stricken omnibus.
Man, there is a lot happening in this game. Holy crap. So that's an omnibus. The omnibus. I can't believe they could bring something so enormous in here. Great Britain's courtrooms are amazing.
As you can see, the omnibus is pulled by 2 horses and can carry up to 8 passengers. 4 passengers seated inside there in the enclosed cabin, and another 4 on the rooftop deck above. Every Londoner knows that the best views of the city's architecture and sights are to be had from the top of an omnibus. And I should point out to our foreign guests that there is a skylight in the roof, allowing a view of the interior from the seats above.
A skylight? Oh!
The penny drops at last, I see. These 2 gentlemen were occupying the rooftop seats on this omnibus when the murder took place. That is how they came to witness the grim incident, through the skylight.
Ah, that makes perfect sense.
Well, counsel, this is a first. In all my years behind the bench, I've never experienced the crime scene itself being brought into the courtroom.
There are a number of important clues remaining inside the carriage, my lord. I would like to submit the omnibus itself as evidence. That is the prosecution's wish.
Very well, I see no reason why not. This omnibus is hereby formally accepted as evidence.
Omnibus has been entered into the court record. The 8-seater omnibus that was the scene of the crime. There were passengers both inside the carriage and on the roof deck that night. I can't believe it. The entire crime scene entered as evidence? Yes, Great Britain is simply extraordinary. I could help myself a lot by giving that omnibus a thorough examination, seeing as it's here. Speaking of... Whew. I've been streaming for an hour. Thankfully, I have not had any more drops in frames. But honestly, with how long some of the parts have been in this game and everything that's going on, I'm not going to call it here. I'm going to try and go for as long as I can doing this. Once I hit a certain point with my voice where I feel like I can't really do much more, I'll probably cut it there and then maybe do another game.
to finish off the stream, because I do want to stream for a good amount tonight. But either way, let's get back to the game. Autopsy report. Victim name Thrice Fired Mason, male, age 54, occupation brickmaker. Time and cause of death 15th of February, 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Stabbed once in the abdomen with a knife whilst journeying in an omnibus. Died due to internal hemorrhaging resulting from the trauma. Crime scene photograph. Defendant's leather gloves.
This is definitely blood, isn't it? Not the most pleasant sight to be confronted with on our first day in London. Well, nothing will come of grumbling now. No. By the way, is Mr. McGilded right-handed? Yes, I believe so. He was toying with a coin with his right hand a little earlier.
Ah, pity. If only he'd been left-handed.
I think blood on either glove would be fairly incriminating, really.
Okay, so that's all there. And is that all to examine here? Anything on the inside? No. Okay. And then the omnibus. Which apparently is pretty big. Oh, gosh. Okay, let's see what all we can examine first. Yep, there's the text. Oh, which means that the guy would be there, which means that, yeah, they could see him. Okay. Well, that sucks. Ladder. Nope. Phoenix Wright Omnibus? You gotta be kidding me. Job Master's London head office. Anything around the front? Doesn't look like it. So it looks like I can examine the door. And the top, like the skylight and the benches probably. Okay, let's examine the door first.
Well, let's open the door and go inside, shall we?
The scene of a murder. It's horrible. Oh, but we can examine the interior. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, this is... Whew, this is weird. Oh, this is weird being like 3D-esque. Oh, geez. Okay, let's first examine this.
Ah, that's a poster for the great exhibition that's due to start 6 months from now. There's a lot of focus being drawn to the Crystal Tower, the centerpiece for the whole exposition. Ooh, the Crystal Tower. It's under construction already, I believe. People all over London must be fizzing with excitement at the prospect of such a grand event.
Examine the skylight from inside. It's quite a large skylight, isn't it?
Yes, quite large enough to afford a good view into the cabin from the roof deck.
And there doesn't appear to be a handle or catch of any description. So I suppose it can't be opened from inside the cabin at least.
The seat looks reasonably soft, but it's actually rather hard when you sit on it. And only just wide enough for two gentlemen to sit side by side, really. Of course, an English gentlewoman would be dressed in such finery. It would be quite impossible for her to climb up to the roof deck, so she would have to be seated in here.
A woman in a kimono would have the same problem.
Women's clothes are very impractical, aren't they?
Okay, and if I examine the door, I probably leave. Is this also the seat?
This seat has a handle, it seems.
Interesting.
This looks like all sorts of equipment that might be needed to keep the omnibus running. feeding tubes, tools to repair wheels, blankets, horseshoeing tools. So it's a storage compartment for the coachman to keep his things, it seems. Doesn't seem to be any space for passengers to store their luggage, that's for sure. Well, I don't imagine it would be very convenient for that purpose anyway.
Yeah, it's just the same thing. If I examine this again... Nope. Okay, so I guess I can't reclose it, maybe? Oh, there we go. Okay. There's no handle on this side.
That's blood that's soaked into the seat. The victim's, obviously. Yes, and that seat would be clearly visible from the roof deck. Would you really stab somebody in full view of the other passengers like that, I wonder? Well, it was after dark. And there was a lamp on in here, so perhaps the culprit couldn't see anything outside through the skylight. Whichever way you look at it, it doesn't seem like it was a planned attack. Ah, that's a poster for the great exhibition that's due to start 6 months from now.
Oh. Okay, so it's the same thing. Okay, so I think I've examined everything that's in here.
Have you seen enough? Let's step back outside then.
Whew. I might potentially have to get more water. And maybe something to cool off my throat a little bit.
So this is the roof deck of the omnibus. Oh, you must have a wonderful view of London streets from up here.
So people sit all the way up here on bitter winter nights with the cold air rushing past them? And they have to pay money to do so?
I can't imagine how cold it must feel.
That just made me think of something horrible. Can you imagine being dragged around in the city in the freezing cold as punishment?
Perhaps that is the real price you pay to stay out late.
You can certainly see inside the carriage through this opening, that's for sure.
Yes, and there's a lamp in the enclosed cabin. So I'm sure the witnesses would have been able to see quite clearly.
That's not good for us. And I think if I examine this, then it's the same thing. Yes, same thing. Okay. Well, that seems like everything. Kind of strange, actually, that there wasn't anything that just kind of stood out. Okay. Oh, wait, now I also want to go to the people. Magnus McGilded, 48, the defendant in this case. He's an incredibly wealthy philanthropist with a wonderful reputation in London. I'm to defend him as a test of my worthiness to become a lawyer. Beric von Zieks, a prosecutor known as the Reaper of the Bailey. Supposedly, the souls of those he prosecutes are eternally damned one way or another. Thrice-fired Mason, the victim, a skilled but poor brickmaker who lived in the East End. Beppo, 62, oh wait, 48, 32, 54. The driver of the omnibus on which the murder took place. He's an eyewitness to the incident. Bruce Fairplay, 34, a gentleman who works as a city banker. He witnessed the incident from his seat on the roof deck of the omnibus. And Lady First. Ladies First. That's the joke on his name. An apprentice milliner who witnessed the incident from a seat on the roof deck. Milliner? What does that mean? Owner of a mill? A person who makes or sells women's hats. Oh, okay. So that's why his name is Lady First, because he makes hats for women. Hereby, Ladies First. I get it. Bruce Fairplay. Beppo. Thrice-fired Mason. Barrick von Zeeks. Magnus McGilded. Male strong-hearted male. There's always a lot of puns with Phoenix Wright games or Ace Attorney games. Oh, I had a bit of a drop. And it seems like it wasn't that big of a deal, so I'll continue playing. Okay.
Let us continue with proceedings then. Your cross-examination, counsel.
Pray don't expect this Nipponese stray to understand the intricacies of a British court's cross-examination rights. Alright, my first cross-examination in a British court. Focus, Ryunosuke. Focus. Cross-exam. He really looks like Apollo during the zoom-in thing. What the witnesses saw. It was the last bus of the evening, so I had few customers. I remember it well. Press.
Hold it!
Hold it! Yes, I think it was some time after 10, wasn't it?
Oh yes, sir.
Oh yes, sir. That's right, sir. Yes, ever so cold it was, sir. Freezing, in fact. And you can watch other people's interactions. And you had 4 passengers on board at the time. Is that correct? Yes, that's right, sir. Not all traveling in the same parts of the bus, of course, though. No.
And there were no other passengers when the incident took place? No one alighted, for example?
You're quite right with that, sir. No other passengers like that. No, none. So nobody fled the scene of the crime, then? I have to say, the boss insists on it running. He does, every day, every evening. The last bus of the day. But I do wonder sometimes if it's altogether worthwhile. Yes, sorry to say. What do you mean by that? Well, what with it being so cold and everything, and only making 20 pence on the run, you see.
Excuse me.
Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Mr. First. Oh, how can I help you, sir? The last thing we did trouble you in... No, I didn't. Sorry. Has he greased his head? Oh dear, sir. I hope my hat's not troubling you, sir. I'm still just an apprentice, you see. Mr. Naruhodo, even the witnesses can see what's going through your mind. You really must be more careful. I wish it were that simple. Sorry. Okay, I need to shoot.
Hold it!
Need to go back to this part that I was... That was my bad. Yes, I spent that much at the pub on the way home, just trying to warm up again. Okay, so I cannot press A on anyone else except for him if I want to advance the dialogue. Okay, good to know. And of course that was the last statement. Victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus.
Hold it!
Press. And you saw them through the skylight in the roof of the carriage?
That's right. When you sit up on the top deck, the window's right there at your feet. There was a lamp on inside, so I had a pretty good view. The two of them were wearing hats, and I couldn't exactly make out their faces. But there's not a shred of doubt in my mind that it was Mr. McGilded.
How can you be so sure?
Well, how can I put it politely? McGilded is a gentleman of rather small stature. I couldn't have mistaken him for anyone else.
Let's not forget that when the vehicle came to a halt, the only people inside the enclosed cabin were the deceased Mr. Mason and Mr. McGilded. There is no room for doubt here. I really wish there was. Then, out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged a knife right into his guts.
Hold it!
You actually saw the exact moment it happened?
Didn't I already testify to that? Or are fair dinkum, hard-working city bankers not considered trustworthy these days?
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. This is no good. I've really got his back up. Perhaps you could just tell us what you saw in a little more detail, if that's...
My lord.
Juror number 3, what's the meaning of this?
My mind is made up, my lord. Completely and utterly made up.
Made up about what?
I don't like the stinking rich. Never have. They're always up to something or other that they shouldn't be. Every one of them. And that little leprechaun of a man is no exception. Well, he can't fool me. There's no point wasting time listening to any more of this. That's my opinion on the matter anyway.
That is precisely what I was about to say. As the foreman of the jury, it's my duty to set a good example to my fellow jurors.
What is happening here? Let me see. Ah, yes. It seems that's how the members of the jury give their verdicts. With fire? Apparently, yes. White for innocent and black for guilty. As the 6 members of the jury make up their minds about the case, one by one they each cast a ball of fire into the great scales of justice, as we saw a moment ago. So if those enormous scales fall completely to the black side, does that mean... Let's do our very best to make sure that doesn't happen. Now I'm even more worried than I was before.
Very well. The court acknowledges the change in the jury's stance. Counsel for the defense, please continue with your cross-examination.
This is a nightmare.
Hold it!
I want to see if there's actually more to say during this. Perhaps you could just tell us what you saw in a little more detail if you don't mind.
Why don't you ask the young man next to me?
Oh,
Me? Oh, well, yes.
okay, so it just goes to the next statement anyways. That's right, he stabbed him. I screamed, I did. Couldn't help it.
Hold it!
He stabbed him, you say, and you were sitting up on the roof deck, were you?
Yes, that's right, sir. I was up on the roof seats. I remember seeing the little gent sitting next to the fellow that was stabbed. I'd been thinking about a new hat design, you see, so I was just gazing absent-mindedly around. But then I happened to look down through the skylight. It was sticking right out from his belly. That huge, great knife.
A grim sight indeed.
Ah, that didn't help me at all. The jury looked like they're even more convinced my client did it than they were before. That appears to have made everyone even more dubious that Mr. McGilded is telling the truth. If only we had some evidence to counter their suspicions.
Mr. First.
Oh, yes, sir.
Is this the knife you saw?
Oh, good grief! Yes, yeah, that's it. The very one, sir. Is that?
Yes, counsel. This is the blade that was driven into the victim's belly like a stake through the heart.
That is a blade of considerable size, counsel.
It is. And furthermore, the scabbard is emblazoned prominently with a certain initial. The letter M, which seems oddly familiar.
Please, no.
M from Magnus, perhaps? Or McGilded, possibly? Take your pick. It seems this particular big name in London made a magnificent mistake.
Objection!
But there are M's everywhere. Yes, like in Mason.
Objection!
This blade is far too extravagant for a poor bricker maker to have owned. No, this weapon of murder almost certainly belongs to the accused.
Not conclusive, but certainly compelling, counsel.
Murder weapon has been entered into the court record. A largish knife that was found lodged in the victim's abdomen. Its quality and fancy ornamentation suggest it must be quite valuable.
My lord, if you'll forgive the interruption.
Juror number 2, go on.
Mr. McGilded is a pillar of society and a gentleman, and a gentleman's word should be sacrosanct. However, those of us in service know we must accept hard truths. Wait, what are you about to do? Dispose of the rubbish!
3 guilty.
No! I don't wish to cause offense, but I do like to eradicate all traces of filth and grime. I have painstakingly typed every word uttered here today and cross-referenced all the facts. As such, I am now in a position to draw the only logical conclusion.
Jeez.
Not again! That's 4 out of 6 jury members who proposed a guilty verdict. There are only 2 left. We've had it. Every time I press these witnesses for more information, I just make the situation worse. Nevertheless, what we need more than anything at the moment is more information. We're still very much in the dark.
I suppose we'll just have to keep pressing the witnesses, knowing that more sparks may well fly.
We mustn't give up hope that we'll uncover something that will give us a way to fight back.
Wow, that was a sentence that I was struggling to say. By the way, I hope everyone that's watching my stream is enjoying it so far. I'm trying to not be too loud, but especially with women voices, I need to project my voice a little louder than I normally do, so.
But
alright, I'll keep trying. I can't give up. I just need to keep calm and listen to the witnesses' statements again. As soon as I heard the scream, I stopped my bus, and then I saw it too. Okay, don't want to present. I want to examine.
that part is the sheath, isn't it? Are you alright, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh, sorry, yes, I just don't really like blades. Oh, those don't seem like the words of a man with a large katana slung from his waist. That's not a blade, that's Kazuma's soul. Anyway, there's no sense in delaying it. Let's see what the blade looks like.
Yep, and there's blood. An ornate letter M, undeniably Mr. Magnus McGilded's initial.
And it's beautifully gilded too. It must be very valuable, I should think. Ah, what is it? Look at this M. If you turn it upside down, it becomes a W. This could change everything. A W? Yes, this is one of those, you know, turnabout cases. I'm sure of it. I'm afraid I don't know at all. But what I am sure of is that this is an M. Oh, well, that idea was quickly quashed. Okay, and then blood. That looks like, well, that looks a lot like blood. It surely is blood. The victim's. An Englishman's blood looks a lot like a Japanese man's blood. Did you think it wouldn't? Sorry, it's just that we've only just arrived here in Great Britain. I'm finding it a little hard to adjust. Yes, I do understand. Man, just nothing is working in this case. Okay, I guess I press here.
Hold it!
What exactly did you see? Oh, well, sir, that would be passenger, sir. Yes, collapsed on the floor he was. And by the passenger, obviously you're referring to the victim, Mr. Mason, the brickmaker. And then the other passenger had that knife in his hand, like this. By the other passenger, obviously you're referring to the accused, Mr. Magnus McGilded. And then he plunged it down like this, stabbing the other passenger in the belly. What?
My lord, I wish to speak. Yes, juror number 5. Do I take it that you too? As the master of the London Guild of Coachmen, the idea of a murder being committed in one of the city's carriages is utterly abhorrent to me. It wouldn't be right to make a decision before hearing all the facts, though, I said to myself. But I've heard enough now. The horse has bolted, as they say.
No, please, just keep an open mind a little longer.
Yup! Now, Silver Blaze, the finish is in sight.
So now Grandma is the only one that is holding it together for me.
Beppo is a long-standing member of the guild, and I trust what the man says.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah, too kind, sir. This is too unkind, sir.
Which now means that 5 jurors agreed to condemn this man.
Grandma, save me!
Madam Juror number 6.
Yes, dear. What can I do for you?
You have heard the testimonies of the witnesses in the stand.
Oh, yes, I certainly have. Still got my hearing, you know.
Then, pray tell, why are you yet to pronounce your leaning?
Well, dear, the thing is, I'm a creature of habit, me. I always go to the park at around this time of day and sit on a nice bench and get on with my knitting. There's a lovely little park just near where I live. McGilded Park, it's called. A gentleman donated it to the city, you know, to put a smile on Londoners' faces, he said. I can't imagine such a fine young gentleman would have it in him to take another man's life.
He's always doing wonderful things for the city.
That's right. A man like that wouldn't stop someone, surely.
Mother, may we go to the McGilded Public Library later and borrow some more books?
How many Londoners live with their heads in the clouds? Do you people not know what kind of a man Magnus McGilded really is?
What kind of a man is he?
The philanthropist Magnus McGilded has enough wealth to purchase the entire city he claims to value so highly. But where did all that wealth come from? Your client is a Shylock, sir, and one with the very darkest of souls.
What? Stone the crows!
That was a bad. McGilden lends money at extortionate. McGilden lends money at extortionate rates of interest, so his victims have no hope of repaying him. When they default, he takes possession of everything they own. He is a vulture that preys on the weak.
I've never heard any mention of that before.
Your faculties haven't deserted you, I'm sure, madame. So has this thought not crossed your mind? Would a man wealthy enough to buy London in its entirety not have a carriage of his own? What possible reason could this man have had to make use of a public omnibus service?
You're not saying that.
The victim, a poor brickmaker, had next to nothing to his name, save considerable financial liability. It will come as no surprise that his creditor was the accused Magnus McGilded. But let it also be known that the very day Mr. Mason was killed was the final repayment date for his debts.
Good gracious!
The brickmaker was destitute. He had lost his house. He had not a shilling with which to repay his debts. And in the end, this pitiful soul had the very last thing he owned taken from him, his life. By the merciless philanthropist pretender, Magnus McGilded.
I don't believe it. If I might add something briefly.
Miss Susato.
You claim that the victim had been lent money by Mr. McGilden, but where's the evidence to support your claim?
He drinks wine. Pray forgive the discourtesy of filling my hallowed chalice in a court of law.
Aha, there it is! Lord von Ziex's hallowed chalice.
How can this be considered acceptable?
But I find myself in unexpectedly good humor. I had heard ladies from the Far East could show great courage, but I didn't expect to experience it myself.
As judicial assistant to the defense, I am simply doing my job.
What a pity that your display of courage is in vain. This is the debtor's ledger, which details all monies loaned by the accused. You will find the victim's name clearly recorded inside.
Oh.
Allow me to present this ledger as evidence. And pray forgive the discourtesy of raising my chalice in a toast to the enigmatic East at the same time.
A marvelous toast, counsel. I will gladly accept this new evidence.
Debtor's ledger has been entered into the court record. I feel like something's going on with this. Like there is too much like going into the corner and too much against me to really get out of it. Is this case supposed to go south? And McGilded is supposed to be sent to death? That would be a first. A catalog of people who had borrowed money from the defendant at a high rate of interest. It includes the victim who owed 20 guineas.
Ah yes, 20 guineas. The victim owed a considerable sum.
And the accused made quite certain he had ample recompense.
Well, it would seem I've had the wool pulled over my eyes.
Regrettably, madame, that is the modus operandi of the accused.
And it's such a pretty little part too. What a scoundrel.
And
still, maybe it's all for the best. But wait a minute, let's think about this a little more before. I don't stand for nonsense!
That was it. The last juror's decision. That isn't the entirety of the case, though.
According to this Encyclopedia of British Law, when all members of the jury have concluded that the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence.
Oh, never mind.
That's what it says here.
The final verdict. It's over then.
Oh! There's a footnote, though.
A footnote?
However, the defense...
All 6 members of the jury are now in agreement in this case.
Allow me to convey my respect for your swift and righteous decision.
According to the laws of the country, I will now conclude the trial by delivering my final verdict. I trust there are no objections.
Miss Susato, just tell me one thing.
Oh, yes?
You were in the middle of saying something before. The footnote in your Encyclopedia of British Law. However, the defense. What did it say next?
Oh, yes, of course. One moment. When all members of the jury have concluded that the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. Then the footnote says, however, the defense has the right to demand a summation examination of the jurors at this point.
Summation examination? Essentially I want to make sure that the jurors are all non-partial. Which 3 of them are not. At least 2 of them are not.
Objection! Objection!
A summation examination? From which century has that tome you have there been resurrected? Judging from the binding, I would say that book is at least 50 years old. Yet a modern text on British law wouldn't even give such an antiquated procedure a mention. It's a relic, long forgotten and certainly no longer practiced. So you're out of luck.
Oh. What even is it, Miss Susato? This so-called summation examination. Oh, one moment and I'll read about it.
You would demand the right to a procedure before you even understand what it entails? Typical Nipponese. Nipponese. Not Nipponese, Nipponese.
Alright, Mr. Naruhodo, I think I understand. It seems that under this procedure, we would be able to appeal to the members of the jury.
To do what? Exactly?
Appeal to them to change their leaning and reverse their decisions. It says here that, if successful, the proceedings of the trial must be resumed.
Make them reverse their decisions.
Yes, in times gone by, barristers would use a summation examination to attempt to influence the jury's decision. But that procedure became something of a formality with no practical benefit, really, so it really fell out of use.
I wonder why.
Because it was devoid of purpose. Changing just one member of the jury's mind would be hard enough, let alone several. No self-respecting defense barrister would even assert his right to try in this day and age.
Still, I don't see any mention of the procedure actually being formally revoked.
What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that although it may be antiquated and largely forgotten, it isn't yet extinct. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo?
A summation examination, our last possible option. Do we assert our right to carry it out or admit defeat? I would want to go for forget it, but I'm so far into the case that I kind of don't want to. in case it is the end of it. So I'm just going to do assert all right. The defense wishes to assert its right to a summation examination, my lord.
Objection!
London is the capital city of the most powerful nation on earth. We have a duty to the world to exemplify the very highest standards of judicial procedure. Summation examinations are an embarrassment that should remain buried.
Objection!
Objection! But if it's our right, it's our right. I believe it could prove vital in this trial.
The defense's petition is perfectly valid. The court will proceed with the summation examination.
This is madness.
Foreman, are you and the remainder of the jury ready? Well, I'm not, there was no mention of this in the letter I received, you see, so all members of the jury will be asked to explain on what grounds they have reached their decision. On what grounds? You must all justify your decisions and explain why you believe the defendant to be guilty.
Well, my lord, you're rather putting us on the spot.
This is most irregular. No mention was made of this before. I don't really hold with all this justifying lark.
That seems to have thrown the jurors off.
It seems none of them have experienced this before.
All right then. Oh, the summation examination. A defense procedure no practicing lawyer has attempted for years, is it? Well, just maybe. It might be the opportunity we've been looking for to turn this trial around.
So be it then. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court hereby calls upon you to state the grounds on which you find the defendant, Magnus McGilded, guilty of this most serious crime.
Can't roll the R's. Serious crime. Judicial Findings. The jurors' contentions.
There was no one else inside the carriage at the time, so it has to have been him.
I trust the driver. He has an excellent memory, it seems. 4 passengers with fares totaling 20 pence. He stuck the chap next to him just like this. Brazen, I must say. Absolutely brazen.
I have simply typed and correlated all the statements made thus far and drawn the logical conclusion.
You can trust the guild. Fair fares is our motto. We haven't raised prices above 4 pence for years.
The scoundrel! Stabbing that poor man on the floor. It beggars belief.
I'm starting to wish I hadn't pushed for this now.
Some of the jurors don't seem to have wonderfully formed arguments, though, do they?
Well, let's see what we can do. We need to get these 6 people to change their minds. I'll have to throw everything I can at them and use some very persuasive language.
Just a moment, Mr. Naruhodo.
Actually, this Ricola is helping a lot with the higher voices thing. Maybe I should take a Ricola before every stream that I need to do a lot of voice acting for.
According to my book, that's not quite how it works.
Oh?
I thought I was going to have to thaw their icy minds with some heartwarming rhetoric about the defendant. Unfortunately, once the jurors have decided the defendant is guilty, they're unlikely to heed anything the defense says.
But then...
They've reached their conclusions by their own reasoning, you see. Your pleas will sound like excuses. In fact, it could recoil on you. The more you try to persuade them, the more entrenched they may become.
Then what on earth am I supposed to do?
Oh dear, I'm just citing what I've read about British law, Mr. Naruhodo.
Right, I'm sorry.
Do you have any idea how to make this work then?
Evidence.
Well, from what I can understand, the key to this procedure is using the jurors' own words to make your arguments.
What do you mean?
Well, the 6 members of the jury are randomly selected members of the public. They may appear to present a united front, but the truth is, they are complete strangers who just happen to find themselves here in the courtroom together.
And that's the way to break them down, you mean?
Yes, exactly. We must listen very carefully to what each member of the jury says, and see if we can identify any contradictory statements. If we can contrast the statements and pit the corresponding jurors against each other.
I see. So it's contradictions in what 2 or more jurors say that we're looking for. In a way, then, this is similar to a regular cross-examination.
Oh, yes, I suppose you're right.
Huh. Find contradictions in their statements and pit the jurors against one another to break them down. Alright, I might be able to pull this off. No, that's not right. I have to pull this off.
Can we start proceedings, counsel? I would ask you to take the stand for this. I'm expecting a clear and concise rebuttal.
Yes, my lord. Yes, my lord. Yes, my lord. Jury examination. The defense's rebuttal. Okay. First, the driver, he has an excellent memory, it seems. 4 passengers, fares totaling 20 pence. Stuck the chap next to him just like this, brazen MSA. Oh, it's gonna be these 2. Nope. Jeez, you talk so fast. Okay. Pit. Four passengers with fares totaling 20 pence. We haven't raised prices above 4 pence for years. 4 times 4 is 16.
Objection!
Those 2 statements clearly contradict each other.
They do? Explain yourself, counsel.
Me? Oh dear, what have I said?
I swear on Silver Blaze's main name, I haven't the first idea what you're talking about.
According to the group testimony we've heard so far, there were 4 passengers on the omnibus in the night in question. And according to the coachman, Mr. Beppo, he took 20 pence in fares.
Quite right. I have those precise details typed neatly here in front of me.
And juror number 5 also told us the following. The fare for the omnibus is always 4 pence.
That it is. A fair and convenient single price. Just the way London's carriages should be operated.
But that doesn't add up at all. In fact, it leaves a glaring discrepancy in the facts.
Why, man, why?
4 passengers paying 4 pence each. If you do the multiplication,
It would be 16 pence.
exactly. As I said, it doesn't add up. The figures are different. By 4 pence, in fact. Or precisely 1 person's fare.
One person's fare?
Yes, in other words, on the omnibus that night, it's distinctly possible there was another passenger we've heard nothing about.
Good gracious! This can't be right! The coachmen of the guild are good, honest men, one and all. Trustworthiness is our watchword.
The figures your coachman claims most certainly do not add up. Your watchword, good sir, is a fallacy.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Guildmaster, I think you ought to consider that if this trial were to end now, the news will surely spread all over London. The news that one of your coachmen tried to hide the fact that he lets nefarious characters ride his omnibus.
Alright then, how do I make it so this miserable trial doesn't end?
Well, according to my book here, You simply launch a ball of fire onto the innocent side of the set of scales.
Now hold your horses there, coachman. We were all in agreement. Why do you have to go and... Wait till I get my hands on you, Beppo! Oh, this is all very irritating.
Begging your pardon, sir, I'm going to do the same.
Yay!
For the love of Mike, not you as well.
A penny can be the difference between a smile and a tear, after all. I certainly can't put my trust in someone who doesn't follow my exacting standards in financial matters.
Oh, really?
I, for one, think it's only proper that we hear from the witnesses again. Oh, well done, Mr. Naruhodo, you did it! If we can manage to change 2 more jurors' minds, we can force the trial to continue.
2 more. Actually, there is something else that's bothering me about a couple of their assertions.
And that's where you must strike next.
So I need to pit 2 more jurors against each other and show there's another contradiction in their assertions.
Exactly, you can do it.
Well, the scales of justice have shifted, but they still weigh heavy on the side of guilt. Counsel, you have the floor again. Continue with your summation examination.
I'm changing my leaning to innocent. I should like to hear what the slipshod bookkeeper has to say for himself.
Beppo, this trial has to continue so I can get to the bottom of this corruption. Not guilty, I say.
It's gonna be these 2.
Stuck the chap next to him just like this. Brazen, I must say. Absolutely brazen.
And then the grandma who says that they were stabbed on the floor, which is different from stabbing like he showed in the gut.
Objection! Those 2 statements are completely
What? Explain, counsel, post haste.
Oh, dearie me. I was only needing a jumper for my other half. What is all this claptrap? What does contradictory even mean, I ask you?
We've heard from more than one witness that they allegedly saw the actual moment when the defendant stabbed the victim. Now, out of curiosity, juror number 3...
What? Can't you see that I'm busy here?
How would you say the defendant stabbed the victim? What sort of motion was it?
Ha! Want to test me, do you? It was like this. Stuck the fellow next to him without even getting up, just like the prim banker said.
Yes, that was Mr. Fairplay's testimony. Quite true.
Now then, juror number 6.
Oh, is that me? Is it? What can I do you for, young man?
How would you say the defendant stabbed the victim, madame?
Oh, well, dear, as far as I understand it, it was like this. He stabbed the poor man after he collapsed on the floor. The coachman said so.
Now don't move! Take a look at these 2 jurors. He stuck the fellow next to him without even getting up, and he stabbed the poor man after he'd collapsed on the floor.
Well, I never. They're stabbing in totally different directions.
What? Bless my stitches! What a muddle!
What this tells us is that there's a strong possibility one of the witnesses isn't telling the truth.
Oh! But why? Why the dickens would they lie?
I don't know that yet, but what I do know is that if the trial ends at this point, we may never find out. We may never know the real truth. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, can you really let that happen in all good conscience?
Lies, you say? Dear me. I can't abide people telling lies.
And we've hit even.
The scales.
I don't believe it. Wait! Now hear this, my fellow jurors. I warn you, you cannot listen to this man. Look at him in his black suit. He's clearly some devious Eastern sorcerer using magic on us all.
If I could use magic, do you really think I'd be putting myself through all this?
Answer me this, Dark Jinx.
Huh? Me?
What exactly is the problem? What of it if two witnesses have slightly different recollections of events?
What of it?
Let's say the Shylock did stab the victim as he was sat next to him on the omnibus, and this young dandy saw him do it. And now let's say the victim collapsed on the floor, and then the Shylock stabbed him again, and this old lady saw him do it. Well, what's to say it didn't happen like that? Hmm?
Who are you calling dandy, sir? Why, I should take this knife to you. Who are you calling old? Why, I should take this needle to you.
They're ready to kill each other now. But could the foreman of the jury be right? Did the two witnesses see two different moments of the same crime? Did they? Let's see the autopsy report. Stabbed once in the abdomen with a knife. It's out of the question. Unfortunately, Mr. Foreman.
What is it, you Dark Jinx? Come on, out with it!
What you're suggesting is impossible. It's out of the question.
What are you talking about, man? How can you possibly say that? You do realize that I'm only doing my job. As foreman of the jury, I have a responsibility to steer everyone in the right direction. So where's your evidence, man? That's what we want to see. I say the two witnesses saw two different moments of the same crime. If you say that's out of the question, show me some proof.
It looks like the only way I'm going to convince him is to present him with something he can't dismiss. Some irrefutable hard evidence. As you wish.
What?
I'll give you the proof. It's out of the question that the two witnesses saw two different moments of the same crime, as proven by the autopsy report. This is the victim's autopsy report. According to what's written here, Mr. Mason was stabbed in the abdomen only once.
Only once?
It's quite simple. The victim was stabbed precisely one time. Which means these witnesses can't possibly have seen it happen two different times.
Me. All right, I concede defeat.
Wait, that means 4 jurors are now leaning to not guilty.
We've done it, Mr. Naruhodo. We've won.
I mean, we've won this part. We still have to do the case.
What are you playing at, you dandy fool?
Shut your trap, sir. No one deceives me.
But we had a consensus.
I said shut your trap. I know a liar when I see one. And if the chap ever dares to cross the threshold of my shop, I'll take this razor-sharp blade and shave every last hair off his head.
Interesting. Please tell me he's a barber.
Well, in a quite remarkable turn of events, the defense's summation examination has flipped the balances of the scales of justice. The jurors now stand at 2 for guilty and 4 for not guilty. Accordingly, there is no longer a large enough majority among the jury for me to adjudicate, and the trial must continue.
Cool.
I hereby ask the defense, prosecution, and witnesses to return to their places, and I call upon all of you to continue to pursue the truth.